So let's go to the region now. Middle East, Israeli forces killing a top Hamas commander. The IDF reporting recent airstrikes over Gaza, taking out a mastermind behind the October 7th attacks alongside 7 other terrorists. And Trey Yingst is on that story. An update now from Tel Aviv. And Trey, hello to you.
Yeah, hey, Bill, good morning. Look, the psychological warfare of Hamas continues, and overnight, the group released a statement from its top military spokesman, Abu Abaida, saying that Hamas was given new instructions about what to do if Israeli forces approach. They instructed their militants in the field that more hostages would be killed if the IDF tries to rescue them. That statement came after a funeral was held for American citizen Hersh Goldberg-Polin in Jerusalem. Thousands of people lined the streets to pay their respects as his parents eulogized their son.
Okay, sweet boy, go now on your journey. I hope it's as good as the trips you dreamed about, because finally, my sweet boy, finally, you're free.
For 330 days, Mama and I sought the proverbial stone that we could turn over to save you. Maybe, just maybe, your death is the stone, the fuel that will bring home the remaining 101 hostages.
Once again, Hamas tried to pressure Israel during this time by releasing a new video showing the hostages alive. After the execution of these 6 Israeli hostages, there are new questions about how the war will end. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke last night at a press conference. He made clear he's not willing to compromise on the issue of the Philadelphia corridor, a strip of land between Gaza and Egypt where Israeli troops are currently deployed. There were also protests last night outside of the Prime Minister's home in Jerusalem as people here demand a deal to bring the remaining hostages home. Now, overnight, I received a long statement from a senior Hamas official actually blaming Israel and the United States for the execution of these hostages. Of course, there was no evidence provided, but it gives you a little bit about the mindset of this organization. They are blaming Israel and America rather than sitting at the negotiating table. Bill?
Or blaming Hamas. Trey Yingst, thank you in Tel Aviv. Dana.
Let's bring in Dan Senor, former foreign policy advisor in the Bush administration. He's the host of the must-listen-to Call Me Back podcast. And Dan, I know, first let me give you a chance to talk about the hostages and their families, because I know that you had been very closely working with them, you had become close, knew them personally, and your thoughts this morning.
It's soul-crushing. 6 Israelis slaughtered, including 1 American. American-Israeli. 2 of the families I knew quite well, Carmel Gott's family and Hersh Goldberg-Polin's family. I will say it's depressing for so many reasons, not the least of which was there was a sense among all these families that there was good news coming sometime soon. Combination of the increased tempo in the rescue operations by the IDF. They are really learning how to operate inside those tunnels, and they've been increasingly rescuing hostages, and then talk of a hostage deal. So one of those 2 things, one of those 2 paths seemed viable, and then suddenly this. And it's every death is heartbreaking, but when you know the families, it's especially so.
So here's the issue. For many who are protesting Netanyahu in Israel, Hamas started the war. Hamas took them captive. Hamas kidnapped them for up to 11 months. Hamas executed them in the back of the head, including bullets through the heart, and somehow it's Israel's problem. And here's Netanyahu addressing a lot of these negotiations.
Israel agreed to the lines that Biden's offered, and Hamas refused it. Blinken said Israel agreed to the American offer. Now Hamas has to do so. This 5 days ago. What happened these 5 days? One thing happened. They murdered 6 of our, in cold blood, 6 of our hostages.
What's the expectation for the White House? I mean, it seemed like the line just continues to move. And now they're trying to placate Democrats in the far left on this.
So as the Prime Minister said, since April 27th, there have been 5 times where the U.S. government, where the administration has said, whether it's in the president's own voice, whether it's in the voice of Anthony Blinken, whether it's in the voice of the Deputy Director of the CIA, David Cohen, Israel has agreed to the proposal. We are now waiting on Hamas, and then Hamas rejects the proposal. So Each time Israel agrees and Hamas rejects, Israel's put in this position, do more, do more, do more, especially after 6 Israelis are slaughtered. Do more, do more, do more. What is Israel supposed to do without compromising the possibility there's another October 7th? And I think whether one supports Prime Minister Netanyahu inside Israel or one abhors Prime Minister Netanyahu inside Israel, on the core issue of what the Prime Minister is arguing, Israel has to prevent another October 7th from happening. And some of the security conditions it is demanding in the context of these negotiations are essential to preventing another October 7th. And Israel can't be pressured to let go of those conditions after it's been making concession after concession after concession.
I want to play for you this short clip from Vice Presidential nominee Tim Walz. Asked about his reaction, this is what happened.
What's your reaction to the 6 hostages being found dead in Gaza?
All right. Thanks, everybody.
I did press for a politician, so did you. To me, unacceptable.
Shocking.
Your thoughts?
I actually was shocked by it. Look, he's new to the national scene, I guess, although he's a pretty seasoned.
He's a congressman.
And a governor, and a 2-term governor. He's a pretty seasoned politician.
And also, apparently, somebody who would be ready on day 1 to be commander-in-chief.
Right. And it is true, it sounds from what I've read, that one of his press handlers said, come on, we got to go. You're not going to answer that question. The question is, what was his visceral reaction to the news that these 6 Israelis were slaughtered, including an American citizen? An American citizen was executed in the dungeon of Gaza in one of these tunnels. What is your gut reaction? Why don't you, as you and I were just talking about before we came on, why doesn't the Governor Walz say, hold on, to his handler? I'm going to answer this question because I have a visceral reaction, an emotional reaction to an American being slaughtered by this terrorist organization. And he just, it was unnerving.
Entirely.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, never even have possession of the ball.
Right.
Just leave it for another day.
Right.
I'll talk about ice cream, but I won't answer that question. And it's abhorrent. It should not have happened. And they better take a better stance soon, Dan.
Yeah.
Last comment.
And now I'll just say, throughout these last few months, before she was the nominee, Vice President Harris made a series of statements very critical of Israel and how it's operated since October 7th, including saying that Israel cannot go into Rafah. She was adamant months ago that Israel cannot go into Rafah. Remember, she saw the maps. Israel can't go into Rafah. What we learned this past few days is there were a lot of American and Israeli hostages in Rafah, underground. The leadership of Hamas is in Rafah. The idea that Harris is dictating or had been dictating that Israel can't go into Rafah is very disconcerting. And then when her vice presidential nominee doesn't even want to talk about it.
Has the Biden administration taken a position on the who controls the Philadelphia corridor?
They have basically said that Israel had agreed to their proposal, their bridging proposal, which kept Israel to some degree in the Philadelphia corridor, but the Biden administration would like Israel to agree to get out of the Philadelphia corridor because it would, in their view, it would like lubricate the negotiations. By the way, I don't think they will because I don't think Hamas is ultimately serious about a deal. They just keep pushing and pushing and pushing for Israel
and
to
pay
make
no
concessions.
consequence.
Right.
Dan Senor, thank you, and our condolences.
Thanks.
If you could pass them on to the families.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.